Sometimes the most beautiful love stories begin with the most impossible circumstances. What happens when a billionaire's son, bound by family duty and an arranged engagement, crashes into the life of a small-town dreamer who believes love should be free? What happens when two hearts that should never meet find themselves fighting against tradition, expectations, and a wedding that's already been planned down to the last champagne flute? This is the story of how sometimes, just sometimes, love finds a way to rewrite even the most carefully scripted lives. And it all started with a single coffee order that went terribly, beautifully wrong. Tell me where in the world you're listening to this story from, and at the end, comment on what you thought of the story or leave a suggestion for improvement. I'd love to hear your feedback. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Hartwell & Associates, Manhattan's most prestigious law firm, where 26-year-old Charlotte "Charlie" Rose was having what could only be described as the worst Monday of her career. No, 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 she muttered, staring at the coffee order list that had somehow gotten completely scrambled. Mr. Davidson gets oat milk, not almond milk. He's allergic. Mrs. Peterson wants decaf, not espresso, or she'll be bouncing off the walls during the merger meeting. Charlie had moved to New York 6 months ago from Cedar Falls, Iowa, with nothing but a marketing degree, $347 in her checking account, and dreams bigger than the Manhattan skyline. Working as a coffee runner wasn't exactly her 5-year plan, but rent in the city was no joke, and she needed this job. Her blonde hair was escaping from what had started as a professional bun, and her thrift store blazer was slightly too big. But Charlie Rose had something that couldn't be bought. An infectious optimism that made even the grumpiest lawyers smile when she delivered their morning caffeine fix. "Breathe, Charlie," she told herself, grabbing the tray of 12 specialty coffees. "You've got this. It's just coffee. What's the worst that could happen?" Famous last words. Meanwhile, 3 blocks away, 30-year-old James "Jamie" Wellington was sitting in the back of his family's Bentley, staring at his phone with the expression of a man walking toward his own execution. "The engagement party is this Saturday." His mother's voice crackled through the speaker. "Victoria's family is flying in from London. The Times wants to do a feature. And James, darling, please try to look happy in the photos. You've been looking positively miserable lately." Jamie ran a hand through his dark hair that had been styled by the same barber his father and grandfather had used, just like everything else in his meticulously planned life. Wellington Industries was worth $2.3 billion, and as the only heir, Jamie's entire existence had been choreographed since birth, including his marriage to Victoria Ashworth, daughter of their biggest business partner. "Of course, Mother," he said automatically, watching the city blur past his window. "I'll be the picture of happiness." The lie tasted bitter in his mouth. Victoria was lovely, intelligent, sophisticated, perfectly bred for this life. They'd known each other since childhood, had been promised to each other since their teens. On paper, it was a perfect match. But Jamie had never felt that spark, that magic he'd read about in books and seen in movies. With Victoria, conversations were pleasant, but predictable. Their kisses were polite. Their entire relationship felt like a business transaction dressed up with flowers and champagne. "Sir?" his driver interrupted. "We're here." Jamie looked up to see they'd arrived at Hartwell & Associates for his 9 a.m. meeting. He straightened his tie, grabbed his briefcase, and stepped out into the bustling Manhattan morning, completely unaware that his carefully controlled world was about to collide with a whirlwind from Iowa. Charlie was juggling the coffee tray, her purse, and her phone, which was buzzing with increasingly frantic texts from her roommate about the rent, when she rounded the corner at full speed. Jamie was checking his Rolex and mentally rehearsing his presentation when he stepped away from the curb. Physics did the rest. The collision was spectacular. 12 specialty coffees launched into the air in perfect slow motion, a caffeinated constellation against the morning sky. Charlie's feet went out from under her. Jamie's briefcase flew open, sending important documents fluttering like confused birds. And somehow, in the chaos of falling papers and flying espresso, Jamie's arms instinctively wrapped around Charlie to break her fall. They landed in a tangle of limbs on the sidewalk, covered in various shades of coffee, surrounded by the evidence of their mutual destruction. For a moment, time stopped. Charlie found herself looking up into the most incredible brown eyes she'd ever seen, eyes that were currently wide with shock and something else she couldn't quite identify. Jamie, meanwhile, was staring down at this laughing blonde who had just turned his orderly morning into beautiful chaos. "Oh my God," Charlie gasped, and then, to Jamie's complete surprise, she started laughing. Not the polite, controlled laughter he was used to, but genuine, infectious giggles that made her whole face light up. "I am so fired." "Are you hurt?" Jamie asked, his voice softer than he'd intended. "Only my pride," Charlie said, still smiling despite being soaked in coffee. "And possibly my future career in beverage delivery. I'm guessing you didn't order the everything mocha with a side of public humiliation?" Jamie surprised himself by laughing, really laughing, for the first time in months. "Actually, that sounds about right for how my morning was going." He helped her sit up, and that's when Charlie really looked at him. Expensive suit, now coffee-stained, perfect hair, now slightly mussed, and a face that belonged in a magazine. But it was his smile that caught her attention, genuine and a little surprised, as if he wasn't used to laughing. "I'm Charlie," she said, offering her hand as they sat on the sidewalk like refugees from a caffeine explosion. "Jamie," he replied, shaking her hand and noticing how warm it was, how natural her smile seemed. "Well, Jamie, unless you happen to be a wizard who can reverse time and prevent me from destroying what was probably a very important coffee order, I think we're both having the kind of morning that makes you want to crawl back into bed." "Actually," Jamie said, looking around at the chaos they'd created, "this is the most interesting my morning has been in years." Charlie tilted her head, studying him. "That's either very sweet or very sad." "Probably both," Jamie admitted, and something in his honesty made Charlie's heart skip a beat. "Charlie Rose." The voice cut through their moment like a knife. Mr. Davidson from the law firm was standing in the doorway, his face red with fury. "What is the meaning of this disaster?" Reality crashed back. Charlie scrambled to her feet, Jamie rising beside her. "Mr. Davidson, I'm so sorry, I can explain. You're fired, Miss Rose. Clear out your desk, now." And just like that, Charlie's New York dream crumbled into a pile of coffee-soaked rubble. Jamie watched the color drain from Charlie's face, saw her shoulders slump, and felt something fierce and protective surge through him. "Excuse me," he said, stepping forward with the kind of quiet authority that came from a lifetime of privilege. "I'm James Wellington. This accident was entirely my fault." Mr. Davidson's expression changed instantly when he heard the name Wellington, as in Wellington Industries, as in one of their biggest potential clients. "Mr. Wellington, I had no idea you were." "Miss Rose was simply doing her job when I carelessly stepped into her path," Jamie continued smoothly. "I'd like to personally compensate for any damages, and I believe an apology to your employee is in order." Charlie stared at Jamie in shock. He didn't even know her, yet here he was using his obvious influence to defend her. Mr. Davidson was now practically bowing. "Of course, Mr. Wellington, Miss Rose, perhaps we were hasty." "No," Charlie said quietly, finding her voice. "It's okay. Thank you." She looked at Jamie with gratitude shining in her blue eyes. "But I think it's time for a change anyway." She began gathering the scattered papers that had fallen from Jamie's briefcase, and he knelt to help her. Their hands brushed as they reached for the same document, and both felt that unmistakable spark of connection. "I owe you coffee," Jamie said softly. "A proper one, without the sidewalk garnish." Charlie smiled, even as her world was falling apart. "You really don't owe me anything. You already did enough. How about lunch then? You know, to discuss my terrible pedestrian skills and your impressive disaster recovery techniques." Charlie looked at him, really looked at him. Designer everything, confidence that came from old money, and yet there was something genuine in his eyes, something that suggested he was just as surprised by this moment as she was. "I should probably go figure out how to explain to my roommate that I just became unemployed in the most spectacular way possible." she said reluctantly. Jamie pulled out his business card, hesitated, then wrote something on the back. In case you change your mind about that lunch. Or if you need a reference for your impressive coffee launching skills. Charlie took the card, her fingers tingling where they touched his. James Wellington, she read aloud, then flipped it over. In elegant handwriting, he'd written, Jamie, because life's too short for formal introductions. Thank you, Jamie, she said, and the way she said his name made his chest tighten in a way that had nothing to do with the coffee stains on his shirt. As Charlie walked away, clutching his card and trying to process what had just happened, Jamie stood on the sidewalk watching her go. He should have been furious about missing his meeting, about the state of his suit, about the scattered documents. Instead, he was thinking about blue eyes and genuine laughter and how for the first time in his carefully planned life, he had absolutely no idea what happened next. His phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. Darling, don't forget we're meeting the wedding planner at 3. She wants to discuss the final details for the ceremony. Jamie stared at the message, then looked in the direction Charlie had gone. She was already lost in the crowd, but somehow the morning felt different. Everything felt different. And for the first time since his engagement had been announced, Jamie Wellington was thinking about someone other than the woman he was supposed to marry. Charlie stared at Jamie's business card for the 100th time that week, turning it over in her hands like a talisman. She'd been carrying it everywhere since Monday's coffee catastrophe, and now it was Friday afternoon. You're going to wear the ink off that thing, said Maya, her roommate, looking up from her laptop where she was editing wedding videos. The irony wasn't lost on Charlie. Just call him already. I can't just call him, Charlie protested, flopping dramatically onto their tiny couch. He's probably forgotten all about the crazy coffee girl by now. Plus, look at this address. His office is in Wellington Tower. Wellington Tower, Maya. As in the building is named after his family. So, you're Charlie Rose from Cedar Falls, Iowa, and you're amazing. Besides, Maya grinned mischievously. Didn't you say he asked you to lunch? Charlie groaned, burying her face in a pillow. That was before I knew he was basically Manhattan royalty. I Googled him, Maya. Big mistake. He's heir to a fortune, went to Harvard, and... She pulled out her phone, showing Maya a society page photo. He's engaged to this absolutely gorgeous British heiress named Victoria Ashworth. Maya studied the photo of Jamie and Victoria at some charity gala. They looked perfect together, both impeccably dressed, both smiling the kind of practiced smiles that graced magazine covers. Maya said thoughtfully. He doesn't look happy. What do you mean? They look like a fairy tale couple. Exactly. Too perfect. Look at his eyes, Charlie. I edit wedding videos for a living. I know what real happiness looks like. This guy looks like he's at a business meeting, not with the love of his life. Charlie grabbed the phone back, studying the photo more carefully. Maya was right. There was something distant in Jamie's expression, something that didn't match the perfect smile. It doesn't matter, Charlie said firmly. He's engaged. End of story. Is it though? Maya raised an eyebrow. Because he gave you his personal number, not his office number. And he wrote Jamie on the back, not James. Sounds like someone who wanted you to call. Before Charlie could respond, her phone rang. Unknown number. It's probably another debt collector, Charlie muttered, but answered anyway. Hello? Charlie, it's Jamie. Wellington. From the coffee disaster? Charlie's heart immediately started doing gymnastics. Maya's eyes went wide and she started making frantic answer him gestures. Oh, hi, Charlie said, trying to sound casual and failing spectacularly. How did you get my number? You filled out an incident report at the law firm. I may have asked Mr. Davidson for your contact information. For insurance purposes, of course. Insurance purposes, Charlie repeated, and she could hear the smile in his voice. Well, that and the fact that I've been thinking about that lunch all week. Are you free tomorrow? Saturday afternoon? Charlie's stomach flipped. Saturday. She glanced at Maya, who was nodding so enthusiastically she looked like a bobblehead. Yes, I'm free. But are you sure? I mean, don't you have important rich person things to do? Jamie's laugh was warm and genuine. Important rich person things can wait. There's this little Italian place in Brooklyn I've been wanting to try. Nothing fancy, just good food and no paparazzi. If you're interested? Brooklyn? Charlie was surprised. She'd expected somewhere on the Upper East Side with white tablecloths and intimidating waiters. Too far? No, it's perfect. I love Brooklyn. Great. How about 2 p.m.? I'll text you the address. After they hung up, Charlie stared at her phone in disbelief. Did that just happen? She asked Maya. Oh, it happened. And now we need to figure out what you're wearing to this definitely not a date but totally a date. Saturday afternoon found Charlie standing outside Rosa's Authentic Italian, a tiny family-owned restaurant in Park Slope that looked like it had been there since the 1950s. She'd changed clothes 3 times, finally settling on a sundress that was nice but not trying too hard, paired with comfortable sandals. She was 5 minutes early, but Jamie was already there, and Charlie's breath caught when she saw him. Gone was the perfectly pressed business suit. Instead, he wore dark jeans and a simple blue button-down with the sleeves rolled up. He looked normal, approachable, even more handsome, if that was possible. Charlie! He stood when he saw her, and she noticed he seemed genuinely happy to see her. You found it okay? GPS is a beautiful thing, she said, accepting the light hug he offered. He smelled like expensive cologne mixed with something warmer, more personal. I hope you're hungry. Mrs. Rosa has been feeding me since I walked in. Apparently, I look too skinny. Charlie laughed. You know the owner? I used to come here in college with my roommate Tony. His grandmother is Mrs. Rosa. Best kept secret in Brooklyn. As they settled into a corner booth, Charlie found herself relaxing. The restaurant was cozy and loud, filled with families and couples sharing giant plates of pasta. It was the complete opposite of what she'd expected. This is amazing, she said, looking around. How did you find it? Tony brought me here freshman year when I was homesick. Well, not homesick exactly. More like sick of home, if that makes sense. There was something vulnerable in his admission that made Charlie study his face more carefully. Were you unhappy at Harvard? Jamie paused, considering his answer. Harvard was expected. Everything in my life has been expected. Sometimes I think I've never made a single decision that was truly my own. The honesty in his voice surprised them both. That sounds lonely, Charlie said softly. It is. He met her eyes. But enough about my first world problems. Tell me about Iowa. What made you come to New York? Dreams, Charlie said simply. I studied marketing and I've always been fascinated by how brands tell stories. I wanted to work for an agency that creates campaigns that actually matter, for companies that are trying to make the world better. And instead, you ended up delivering coffee to lawyers. Hey, everyone starts somewhere. Besides, I was learning a lot about corporate culture. Mostly that I never want to work in corporate culture. Jamie laughed. Fair enough, so what's next? Well, after my spectacular firing, I've been thinking about freelancing. Maybe starting small, helping local businesses with their marketing, building something that's mine, The passion in her voice was infectious. Jamie found himself leaning forward, genuinely interested in every word. That sounds incredible. Scary, but incredible. What about you? Do you love what you do? The question caught Jamie off guard. No one had ever asked him that before. Whether he loved running Wellington Industries was irrelevant. It was his duty, his destiny. I've never really thought about it that way, he admitted. It's what I was born to do. That's not what I asked. Charlie's directness was refreshing and terrifying. Jamie found himself telling her things he'd never said out loud, about feeling trapped by expectations, about wondering what kind of man he might have been if he'd grown up somewhere else, as someone else. I used to want to be a teacher, he said suddenly, surprising himself. History. I loved the stories, the way past events shaped everything that came after. What stopped you? Reality, Responsibility. The family business isn't going to run itself. Says who? Charlie challenged gently. I mean, couldn't you hire people to run it? Use your resources to do what you actually love? It's not that simple, isn't it? Before Jamie could answer, Mrs. Rosa herself appeared at their table, beaming at them with the kind of smile that suggested she'd been watching their entire conversation. You two are so cute together, she announced, setting down plates of food they hadn't ordered. On the house, for young love. Both Charlie and Jamie started to protest, but Mrs. Rosa was already bustling away, leaving them staring at each other across steaming plates of the most delicious-looking pasta Charlie had ever seen. Young love, Jamie repeated quietly, and something in his tone made Charlie's heart skip. She doesn't know we're just... Charlie trailed off, realizing she didn't know how to finish that sentence. Just what? Jamie asked, his brown eyes serious. The question hung between them, loaded with possibility and danger. Charlie took a bite of pasta to buy herself time, and her eyes immediately widened. Oh my God, this is incredible. Right? Mrs. Rosa's secret recipe. She guards it like state secrets. They fell into easier conversation after that, talking about books and movies and travel. Charlie told him about growing up in Iowa, about summer nights catching fireflies and her grandmother's apple pie. Jamie told her about boarding school and awkward family dinners and the weight of carrying a name that meant something to everyone but him. What struck Charlie most was how normal he seemed when he forgot to be James Wellington III. When he laughed at her stories or got animated talking about a book he loved, he was just Jamie, funny and thoughtful and surprisingly down to earth. What struck Jamie was how alive Charlie made him feel. Her enthusiasm was contagious, her laugh was music, and the way she looked at the world with such optimism and possibility made him remember what it felt like to hope for something. They were sharing tiramisu when Jamie's phone buzzed with a text. Charlie saw his face change as he read it, the easy smile fading into something more guarded. Everything okay? She asked. Victoria, he said simply, showing her the message. Darling, the florist needs to know if you prefer white roses or cream roses for the centerpieces. Call me. XOXO. The reminder of his engagement hit Charlie like a cold wave. For the past 2 hours, she'd let herself forget that this wonderful, complicated man belonged to someone else. You should probably go, she said quietly, starting to gather her purse. Charlie, wait. Jamie reached across the table, covering her hand with his. I need to tell you something. The touch of his hand sent electricity up her arm, but she forced herself to pull away. Jamie, don't, please. You're engaged. I know I am, but nothing. Charlie stood up, her heart breaking a little. This was lovely, really. But we both know this can't go anywhere. Jamie stood too, looking desperate. What if I told you that engagement isn't what you think it is? It doesn't matter what kind of engagement it is. You're committed to someone else. What if I wasn't? The question stopped Charlie cold. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something in his eyes that made her chest tight. But you are, she whispered. For now. The words hung between them like a promise and a threat. Charlie felt herself wavering, felt the pull of possibility and the weight of reality warring in her chest. I can't be the reason you change your life, she said finally. And I can't wait around hoping you will. She started to leave, but Jamie caught her hand. Charlie, please just... Can I see you again as friends? Friends don't look at each other the way you're looking at me right now. Jamie's smile was sad but genuine. You're right. They don't. Charlie felt tears threatening and knew she had to leave before she did something stupid like kissing him right there in Mrs. Rosa's restaurant. Goodbye, Jamie. This time he didn't try to stop her. As Charlie walked toward the subway, she could feel him watching her go. Every step felt like walking away from something that could have been beautiful, if only the timing had been different, if only he had been free, if only she was the kind of person who could fight for something that belonged to someone else. But she wasn't that person. Even if her heart was telling her that maybe, just maybe, she was falling for someone she could never have. Behind her, Jamie stood outside Rose's for a long time staring at his phone. Victoria's message about flowers seemed to mock him. How could he care about centerpieces when he'd just watched the most vibrant, genuine person he'd ever met walk out of his life? For the first time since his engagement had been announced, Jamie Wellington was seriously considering what it would mean to disappoint everyone who had ever had expectations for his life. And for the first time, he thought it might be worth it. 2 weeks had passed since the lunch at Rose's, and Charlie had thrown herself into building her freelance marketing business with the kind of determination that came from needing a distraction. She'd landed 3 small clients, a local bakery, a vintage bookstore, and a dog grooming salon, and was working 16-hour days to avoid thinking about brown eyes and what-ifs. It wasn't working. "You're doing it again," Maya said, looking up from her editing station where she was working on a wedding video that seemed to mock Charlie's current situation. "Doing what?" Charlie asked, not looking up from her laptop where she was designing a logo for the bookstore. Sighing dramatically every 5 minutes. "Also, you've been designing that same logo for 3 hours. It was perfect 2 hours ago." Charlie saved her work and closed the laptop with more force than necessary. "I'm fine." "You're fine like the Titanic was fine right before it hit the iceberg." The Titanic reference is a bit dramatic, don't you think? Is it, though? Maya turned her chair to face Charlie fully. "When was the last time you checked Instagram?" "I don't check Instagram anymore." It was mostly true. She'd only looked at Jamie's profile 17 times. Not that she was counting. "Good, because you definitely shouldn't look at the Wellington Industries page, or the Manhattan Society Times. Or, Maya," Charlie's voice was warning, "Victoria Ashworth's page where she's posting about her engagement party tonight at the plaza." Charlie felt her stomach drop. "Tonight? Charlie, don't..." But Charlie was already grabbing her phone, and within seconds she was staring at a series of Instagram stories that felt like tiny daggers to her heart. Victoria was absolutely stunning. Tall, elegant, with the kind of refined beauty that graced magazine covers. The plaza looked like a fairy tale, decorated in white and gold with flowers that probably cost more than Charlie's rent. And there was Jamie, looking devastatingly handsome in a black tuxedo, smiling for photos with Victoria clinging to his arm like she owned him, which Charlie supposed she did. "He looks miserable," Maya said softly, looking over Charlie's shoulder. "He looks fine. They look perfect together." "Charlie, I need some air." Charlie grabbed her jacket and headed for the door, needing to escape before she did something stupid like cry over a man she'd known for 2 weeks. But the universe, it seemed, had other plans. Charlie had been walking aimlessly through Central Park for an hour when the rain started. Not a gentle drizzle, but the kind of sudden downpour that sent everyone scrambling for shelter. She ducked under the nearest pavilion, shaking water from her hair and laughing despite herself at the cosmic joke of it all. Of all the pavilions in all of Central Park. Charlie spun around, her heart stopping. Jamie stood at the other end of the shelter, still in his tuxedo but with his bow tie undone and his hair damp from the rain. He looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine, except for his eyes, which looked exactly as lost as Charlie felt. "Jamie, what are you doing here? Shouldn't you be at your engagement party?" "I should be." He stepped closer and Charlie noticed he was carrying his jacket and his dress shirt was partially unbuttoned. "I should be doing a lot of things I'm not doing lately." Did you leave your own engagement party?" "Apparently." Jamie ran a hand through his wet hair, a gesture that was becoming familiar and devastating to Charlie. "One minute I was listening to my father give a toast about tradition and family legacy, and the next I was walking out the back door of the plaza like some kind of runaway groom." "Jamie, you can't what? Can't finally admit that I'm miserable? Can't acknowledge that I've been thinking about you every day for 2 weeks? Can't accept that I'm about to marry a woman I care about but don't love?" The words hung between them like a confession and an accusation. "You barely know me," Charlie said weakly. "I know that you make me laugh. I know that you're brave enough to chase your dreams with $300 and a belief that things will work out. I know that you see possibilities where other people see problems. I know that 2 hours with you taught me more about who I want to be than 30 years of being James Wellington III. Charlie felt tears mixing with rain on her cheeks. That's not enough to blow up your entire life. Isn't it? Jamie stepped closer, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his brown eyes. Charlie, I've been thinking about what you said, about hiring people to run the company so I could teach, about making my own choices for once. And I've been thinking about a lot of things, like how I've never felt about Victoria the way I felt watching you walk away from roses. Like how I've been sleepwalking through my life until a blonde tornado crashed into me carrying 12 cups of coffee. Jamie, Charlie's voice was barely a whisper. I know this is crazy. I know the timing is impossible. I know I have no right to ask you this. He paused, his eyes searching hers. But I need to know, do you feel it too? This thing between us? Charlie closed her eyes, fighting against everything her heart was screaming. When she opened them, Jamie was still there, still looking at her like she was the answer to questions he hadn't known he was asking. It doesn't matter what I feel, she said finally. You're engaged, Jamie. There are hundreds of people at the plaza right now celebrating your upcoming marriage. Your parents, her parents, business partners. I don't care about any of them. Yes, you do, and you should. You can't just disappear from your own engagement party and expect everything to be okay. What if I don't want everything to be okay? What if I want everything to change? The hope in his voice was breaking Charlie's heart. You need to go back, she said, stepping away from him. You need to go back and be with Victoria and stop whatever this is before it goes any further. Is that what you want? It's what's right. That's not what I asked. Charlie looked at him. Really looked at him. His hair was disheveled. His perfect tuxedo was wrinkled and rain-soaked, and he was looking at her like she was the only person in the world. He was beautiful and kind and everything she hadn't known she was looking for, and he belonged to someone else. Go back to your party, Jamie, she whispered. Come with me. What? Come with me. To the party. I know it sounds insane, but it doesn't just sound insane, it is insane. I can't crash your engagement party. Why not? You crashed into my life pretty effectively. Despite everything, Charlie found herself smiling. This isn't a rom-com, Jamie. I can't just show up in my jeans and rain-soaked sweater to your fancy plaza party. Actually, Jamie said, his eyes lighting up with something that looked dangerously like an idea. You could. There's a charity auction at the party, for the Children's Hospital. They're always looking for last-minute volunteers to help coordinate. I could introduce you as the event coordinator I hired. That's lying. That's creative problem-solving. Jamie, one dance, Charlie. Give me one dance and then I'll let you go. I'll stop calling, stop texting, stop showing up in random places where you might be. You haven't been calling or texting. Because you told me not to, but I've wanted to. Every day. The admission hung between them and Charlie felt her resolve wavering. One dance. What harm could one dance do? Everything, her rational mind screamed. Absolutely everything. This is a terrible idea, she said. Probably. Victoria will be there, your parents, everyone. Yes. I'll be completely out of place. You'll be perfect. Charlie looked at Jamie, at this man who was willing to leave his own engagement party to stand in the rain with her, and felt her carefully constructed walls crumbling. One dance, she said finally. And then this ends. Whatever this is, it ends tonight. One dance, Jamie agreed. But something in his smile suggested he was hoping one dance might change everything. An hour later, Charlie was standing in front of the Plaza Hotel wearing a cocktail dress Maya had practically forced her into. If you're going to crash an engagement party, you're going to look stunning doing it, and questioning every life choice that had led to this moment. I can't do this, she said to Jamie, who looked devastatingly handsome again now that he'd returned to the party, made his excuses, and come back to collect her. Yes, you can. You're Charlie Rose from Iowa who moved to New York with $300 and a dream. You can do anything. Flattery will not make this less insane. How about honesty then? Jamie turned to face her fully. I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since the moment we met. I know that's not fair to you or to Victoria or to anyone, but it's the truth. and I need to know if I'm imaging this connection between us. Charlie looked up at the plaza, all lit up and elegant, and thought about Victoria inside. Beautiful, sophisticated, perfectly suited for this world. What if you're not imagining it? She asked quietly. What if this is real? What then? Then I figure out how to be brave enough to choose what I want instead of what's expected of me. And if you can't, then at least I'll know I tried. Charlie took a deep breath, looking at Jamie's outstretched hand. She thought about all the sensible reasons she should walk away. She thought about the complications and the heartbreak and the impossibility of it all. Then she thought about how he'd made her feel at Rosa's, alive and seen and valued in a way she'd never experienced. One dance, she said, taking his hand. One dance, Jamie agreed, leading her toward the golden doors of the plaza. But both of them knew that some dances change everything, and there was no going back once the music started. The plaza ballroom was a vision of old-world elegance that took Charlie's breath away. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across marble floors, white roses cascaded from every surface, and Manhattan's elite mingled in designer gowns and perfectly tailored tuxedos. It was beautiful, intimidating, and everything Charlie had never been part of. Breathe, Jamie whispered close to her ear as they entered, his hand warm and steady on her back. You belong here. No, I really don't, Charlie murmured, acutely aware of every eye that turned their way. Even in Maya's borrowed cocktail dress, she felt like an imposter in a world of trust funds and generational wealth. James, there you are. A distinguished woman in her 50s glided toward them, her expression a careful balance of relief and reproach. Your father has been looking everywhere for you. Where did you disappear to? Mother, this is Charlotte Rose, the event coordinator I hired to help with the charity auction, Jamie said smoothly, and Charlie was amazed at how effortlessly he lied. Charlotte, my mother, Patricia Wellington. Patricia's sharp blue eyes assessed Charlie with the kind of scrutiny that could appraise a person's net worth in seconds. Ms. Rose, how unexpected. I wasn't aware we'd hired additional staff for this evening. Last-minute addition, Jamie said before Charlie could respond. Charlotte comes highly recommended. I see. Patricia's smile was polite but glacial. Well, we do appreciate your dedication to the Children's Hospital, dear. Though I must say you look rather young to be running events of this caliber. I believe in starting early and working hard, Mrs. Wellington, Charlie replied, finding her voice and her spine simultaneously. Some of the best ideas come from fresh perspectives. Something flickered in Patricia's eyes, surprise perhaps or grudging respect. Indeed. Well, do enjoy the evening, Ms. Rose. James, your father needs to speak with you about the Ashworth contract. As Patricia glided away, Charlie turned to Jamie. The Ashworth contract? Victoria's family business merges with ours after the wedding, Jamie said quietly, his jaw tight. It's part of the arrangement. The arrangement being your marriage. Yes. Before Charlie could respond, a vision in ivory silk appeared at Jamie's side. Victoria Ashworth was even more stunning in person, tall, elegant, with the kind of refined beauty that belonged in museums. Her smile was perfect, her posture impeccable, and her hand immediately found Jamie's arm with the possessive grace of ownership. Darling, there you are, Victoria said, her British accent adding another layer of sophistication to everything around her. Daddy's been asking about the honeymoon plans. Her eyes found Charlie and her expression shifted to polite curiosity. And who might this be? Victoria, this is Charlotte Rose. She's helping coordinate the charity auction tonight, Jamie said, and Charlie noticed he stepped slightly away from Victoria's touch. How lovely, Victoria said, extending a perfectly manicured hand. I do appreciate people who give back to the community, though I must say, you look familiar. Have we met? Charlie's heart hammered. I don't think so. I'm fairly new to the city. Victoria studied her with the kind of attention that made Charlie feel like a specimen under glass. Well, I do hope you enjoy the evening. The Children's Hospital is such a worthy cause. It is. Charlie agreed, and then, because she apparently had a death wish, added, "You must be very proud to be marrying someone who cares so much about giving back." "Oh, I am," Victoria said, her smile sharpening slightly. "James is quite the philanthropist, among his many wonderful qualities." She turned to Jamie, slipping her arm through his with practiced ease. "Speaking of which, darling, I promised Lady Catherine we'd have that dance before dinner." Jamie's eyes found Charlie's over Victoria's head, and she saw apology and frustration and something else she couldn't quite name. "Of course," he said. "Charlie, will you excuse us?" "Naturally," Charlie replied, watching as Victoria led Jamie toward the dance floor like a prize she'd won. Charlie stood alone in the middle of the ballroom, surrounded by wealth and tradition and everything she would never be part of, watching the man she was falling for dance with the woman he was going to marry. It was torture disguised as elegance. "You look like you could use a drink." Charlie turned to find a man about Jamie's age approaching with 2 champagne flutes. He was handsome in an easy, approachable way, with kind eyes and a smile that seemed genuine. "I'm Tony," he said, offering her a glass. "Tony Rossini. I'm guessing you're the mysterious Charlotte that Jamie's been talking about." "He's been talking about me?" The words slipped out before Charlie could stop them. "Not talking exactly, more like brooding. Jamie's always been a brooder, but lately he's been Olympic-level brooding." Tony's grin was infectious. "Plus, he asked me about roses the other day. Specifically, he asked if my grandmother had mentioned anything about a blonde girl who made him laugh." Charlie felt her cheeks warming. "Mrs. Rosa talks about her customers?" "Mrs. Rosa talks about everything. She also happens to think you two are perfect for each other, which is why she's been asking when you're coming back." "We're not." "It's not." Charlie gestured helplessly toward the dance floor where Jamie was spinning Victoria in perfect time to the orchestra. "Right, not together. Which is why you're at his engagement party looking like someone stole your favorite song." Charlie took a large sip of champagne. "It's complicated. The best things usually are." Tony followed her gaze to the dancing couple. "You know, I've known Jamie since college. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looked at you when you walked in here tonight. He's engaged, Tony, to someone perfect for him. Perfect on paper, maybe, but perfect on paper and perfect for someone are 2 very different things." Before Charlie could respond, the music changed to something slower, more intimate. Couples moved closer together, and Charlie watched Jamie's face as he held Victoria. He was going through the motions beautifully, but there was no joy in it, no connection. He looked like a man fulfilling an obligation. "One dance," Tony said suddenly. "What?" "You're dying to dance with him. I can see it written all over your face, and he keeps looking over here like he's trying to figure out how to escape without causing a scene." Tony set down his champagne glass. "So here's what we're going to do. You're going to dance with me, as the event coordinator mingling with guests perfectly innocent. And somehow, in all that mingling, you might just end up dancing with the groom-to-be. Tony, I can't." "Sure you can. What's the worst that could happen?" Famous last words, Charlie thought, but she found herself taking Tony's offered hand anyway. They moved onto the dance floor, and Tony was a good dancer, easy to follow, comfortable to be with. But Charlie was acutely aware of Jamie and Victoria just a few couples away, and when Tony spun her in a wide turn, she found herself looking directly into Jamie's eyes. The look that passed between them was electric, full of longing and frustration, and things that couldn't be said in a ballroom full of people. Victoria noticed Jamie's distraction and followed his gaze, her expression shifting from content to suspicious in the span of a heartbeat. "I think we've been spotted," Tony murmured. "This was a bad idea." "Probably, but look." Charlie looked and saw Jamie excuse himself from Victoria, moving through the crowd with the kind of determined purpose that made Charlie's heart race. "Ms. Rose," he said formally when he reached them, but his eyes were anything but formal. "Might I steal a dance? I wanted to thank you personally for your work with the charity auction." Tony stepped back with a knowing grin. "She's all yours, man. Try not to do anything I wouldn't do." And then Jamie's arms were around her, one hand at her waist, the other holding hers, and they were moving together to music that seemed written just for this moment. "I can't believe you came," Jamie said softly, his breath warm against her ear. "I can't believe I let you talk me into it. Are you sorry?" Charlie looked up at him, at this man who had turned her world upside down in the space of 3 weeks, and felt her heart breaking and soaring simultaneously. "Ask me in 5 minutes," she said. Jamie laughed, spinning her gently, and for a moment they were the only two people in the world. The ballroom, the other guests, even Victoria, everything faded away except the feeling of being exactly where she belonged. "Charlie," Jamie said, his voice serious now, "I need to tell you something. Don't. I have to. I can't marry her." The words hit Charlie like a physical blow. "Jamie, don't say that." "It's true. I've known it for weeks, but I was too much of a coward to admit it. Being with you, talking to you, feeling what I feel when I'm with you, it's shown me what I've been missing, what I've been settling for. You can't know that after 3 weeks. Can't I?" Jamie stopped dancing, his hands framing her face. "Charlie, I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about you, and I hope, you feel the same way." Charlie closed her eyes, feeling tears threatening. "It doesn't matter what I feel. It's the only thing that matters. There are 200 people here celebrating your engagement. Then maybe it's time they learned the truth." "Jamie, no." But it was too late. Jamie had stepped back, his decision made, and Charlie could see the exact moment he chose love over duty, possibility over security. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jamie called out, his voice carrying across the ballroom. The orchestra stopped playing, conversations died, and every eye turned toward them. Charlie felt the blood drain from her face. "Jamie, don't do this." "I have to," he said quietly, then raised his voice again. "I have an announcement to make." Victoria appeared at his side, her face pale but composed. "James, darling, what are you doing?" Patricia Wellington looked horrified. Jamie's father was making his way through the crowd with the expression of a man watching his entire world collapse. "I'm sorry," Jamie said, looking first at Victoria, then at his parents, then back at Charlie. "But I can't do this. I can't marry someone I don't love when I'm standing here with someone I do." The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria's composure finally cracked. "James, you're not thinking clearly. This is just pre-wedding nerves." "No, Victoria, this is me finally being honest. You deserve someone who loves you the way you deserve to be loved. And I deserve the chance to be with someone who makes me want to be the best version of myself. And that's her?" Victoria's voice was quiet, but it carried clearly in the stunned silence. "A nobody event coordinator?" "That's Charlie Rose," Jamie said firmly. "And she's not a nobody. She's the woman I love." The words hung in the air like a confession and a revolution. Charlie felt like she couldn't breathe. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. Not like this. Not in front of all these people, not with Victoria's heart breaking in real time. "I'm sorry," she whispered, though she wasn't sure if she was apologizing to Jamie, to Victoria, or to the universe for letting things get this far. And then she ran. She pushed through the crowd of shocked faces, past the whispers that were already starting, past the photographers who were undoubtedly capturing every moment of the most scandalous society event of the year. She ran out of the plaza into the New York night, leaving behind a ballroom full of chaos and a man who had just given up everything for a love that had lasted 3 weeks. Behind her, Jamie stood frozen in the wreckage of his old life, watching the woman he loved disappear into the night and wondering if choosing her had been the bravest thing he'd ever done or the most catastrophic mistake of his life. Charlie spent 3 days hiding in her apartment, ignoring Jamie's calls, texts, and the increasingly desperate voicemails that made her heart ache every time she heard his voice. "Charlie, please call me back. I know you're angry, but we need to talk. I don't regret what I did. I only regret that you weren't there when I finally found the courage. The newspapers are having a field day, but I don't care. I care about you." Maya had been bringing her food and updates from the outside world, most of which Charlie didn't want to hear. "Manhattan's most eligible bachelor chooses love over fortune," Maya read from her phone. "Wellington heir abandons engagement for mystery woman." Oh, this one's good. From rags to riches, the Cinderella story that shocked society. They make it sound like a fairy tale, Charlie said miserably from under a pile of blankets. It's not a fairy tale. It's a disaster. Is it though? Jamie chose you, Charlie. He gave up everything for you. That's exactly the problem. I never asked him to give up everything. I never wanted to be the reason his life imploded. Maya sat on the edge of the couch. What if he's happier with his life imploded? Before Charlie could answer, someone knocked on the door. Her heart leaped, hoping and dreading that it might be Jamie, but Maya returned with Tony. He sent me, Tony said without preamble. He figured you might actually let me in. How is he? Charlie asked despite herself. Terrible. Great. Completely lost without you. Tony sat down across from her. He's staying at my place because the paparazzi have been camping outside his apartment. He's been surviving on coffee and regret. Tony, he quit Wellington Industries. That stopped Charlie cold. What? Handed in his resignation yesterday. Told his father he was done living someone else's life. Tony leaned forward. Charlie, I've known Jamie for 12 years. I've never seen him this sure about anything. He's making a mistake. Says who? His parents, society, or you? Charlie was quiet for a long moment. What about Victoria? Victoria's handling it with more grace than anyone expected. Apparently, she told Jamie she'd rather be alone than married to someone whose heart belonged to someone else. The guilt Charlie had been carrying shifted slightly. At least Victoria wasn't completely devastated. And his family? Furious, disappointed, but they'll come around, they love him. He threw away $1 billion merger, Tony. He threw away a life that was making him miserable. Tony's voice was gentle but firm. Charlie, what are you really afraid of? The question hung between them, and Charlie realized she'd been avoiding thinking about it too deeply. I'm afraid I'm not enough, she whispered finally. I'm afraid that in 6 months or a year, he'll realize what he gave up and resent me for it. I'm afraid I'll never fit into his world, and I'm afraid he'll get tired of trying to fit into mine. And what if you're wrong? What if you're exactly enough? What if you're everything? That evening, Charlie found herself standing outside Rosa's restaurant in Brooklyn, drawn by a need for perspective and Mrs. Rosa's wisdom. The older woman took one look at her and immediately ushered her to a corner table with a steaming plate of pasta. You look terrible, cara mia, Mrs. Rosa said with the bluntness that only came from genuine affection. Like someone who's been crying over a good man who loves her. It's complicated, Mrs. Rosa. Love is always complicated. But you know what's more complicated? Regret. Mrs. Rosa sat across from her. You think I don't know who that boy is, Jamie Wellington, all over the newspapers, and you, the mystery woman who stole his heart. Charlie nearly choked on her pasta. You knew? I have eyes, don't I? And I know love when I see it. The way he looked at you, the way you looked at him, that's not complicated, that's beautiful. But the timing, there's never perfect timing for love, child. If there was, nobody would ever fall in love because we'd all be waiting for the right moment. Mrs. Rosa reached across and patted Charlie's hand. My Giuseppe proposed to me during a hurricane. Worst timing possible. But you know what? We had 47 beautiful years together. Jamie gave up everything for me. His family, his company, his entire life. And what if I'm not worth it? Mrs. Rosa's laugh was warm and knowing. Oh, cara mia. You think love is about being worth something? Love isn't about deserving. Love is about choosing. Every day you choose each other. Every day you decide that this person is worth whatever comes. But what if? Mrs. Rosa waved her hand dismissively. You know what if gets you? Nothing. You know what taking a chance gets you? Maybe everything. As if summoned by their conversation, the door chimed and Jamie walked in. He looked tired, rumpled, and absolutely wonderful. His eyes found Charlie immediately, and the relief on his face was unmistakable. I hoped I'd find you here, he said softly. Mrs. Rosa stood with a satisfied smile. I'll leave you two to talk, But remember what I said, cara mia. Love is about choosing. Jamie sat across from Charlie, and for a moment they just looked at each other. I quit my job, he said finally. Tony told me. I meant what I said at the plaza, all of it. Charlie felt tears threatening again. Jamie, you can't just throw your life away. I'm not throwing it away. I'm finally starting to live it. He reached across the table, covering her hand with his. Charlie, I know this is crazy. I know 3 weeks isn't long enough to know someone completely, but it's long enough to know that I've never felt this way about anyone. It's long enough to know that I'd rather have an uncertain future with you than a guaranteed one without you. What if your family never forgives you? Then I'll build a new family, with you if you'll have me. What if you can't find another job? Then I'll teach, like I always wanted to. Or I'll help you with your business. We'll figure it out together. Charlie looked at this man who had given up everything for her, really looked at him. He wasn't the polished billionaire heir anymore. He was just Jamie, choosing love over security, possibility over certainty. One more what if, she said quietly. Anything. What if I'm falling in love with you too? Jamie's smile was brighter than all the lights in Brooklyn. Then I guess we'll have to figure out what comes next. Together? If you'll have me. Charlie thought about Mrs. Rosa's words, about choosing love over fear, about the difference between perfect timing and perfect love. Yes, she said simply. And when Jamie leaned across the table to kiss her, Charlie finally understood that sometimes the most beautiful love stories begin with the most impossible circumstances. And sometimes, just sometimes, love really does find a way. The morning sun streamed through the windows of the cozy Brooklyn brownstone that Charlie and Jamie had turned into both their home and the headquarters of Rose and Wellington Marketing, a company that specialized in helping small businesses tell their stories. Charlie was at the kitchen table, laptop open, working on a campaign for a family-owned bookstore in Queens, when Jamie appeared with 2 cups of coffee and that smile that still made her heart skip after a year together. One perfectly brewed coffee for the most brilliant marketing mind in Brooklyn, he said, kissing the top of her head. Flattery will get you everywhere, Charlie laughed, accepting the coffee gratefully. How did your interview go yesterday? You never told me. Jamie's grin widened. I got the job. What? Charlie jumped up so fast she nearly knocked over her coffee. You got the teaching position at Brooklyn Academy? I start Monday. Freshman and sophomore American history. Jamie caught her in his arms as she launched herself at him. Turns out my unconventional path to education made me exactly what they were looking for. I'm so proud of you. Charlie kissed him thoroughly, still amazed that this wonderful, complicated man was hers. The past year hadn't been easy. Jamie's parents had needed months to accept his choices, though they'd finally come around when they saw how happy he was. The society pages had eventually moved on to other scandals, and Charlie's business had grown from 3 clients to 27, thanks partly to Jamie's business connections and mostly to her own talent and determination. Speaking of good news, Charlie said, settling back into her chair. Remember that nonprofit campaign I pitched last month, the one for literacy programs? The one you've been obsessing over for weeks? I got it. And Jamie, it's huge. National campaign, 6-figure budget, the chance to actually make a difference. Jamie's expression shifted to pure pride and joy. Charlie, that's incredible. We have to celebrate. Actually, we already are celebrating tonight. Remember? Dinner at Rosa's with Tony and Maya? Right, the weekly tradition that Mrs. Rosa insists on. Jamie smiled. She's going to be insufferable when she hears about your campaign and my job. She'll probably start planning our wedding before dessert arrives. The mention of wedding made both of them pause. It wasn't that they hadn't talked about it. They had in careful, hypothetical terms. But after everything that had happened with Victoria, the topic carried extra weight. Would that be so terrible? Charlie asked quietly. Her planning our wedding? Jamie set down his coffee cup, studying Charlie's face carefully. Are you asking what I think you're asking? I don't know. Maybe. Are you answering what I think you're answering? Charlie rose, Jamie said, dropping to one knee right there in their kitchen, and Charlie's heart stopped. I know I don't have a ring, and I know this isn't the romantic proposal you probably dreamed of, but Jamie, let me finish, please. He took her hands in his, and Charlie could see that his were shaking slightly. A year ago, I was sleepwalking through a life that looked perfect on paper but felt like a beautiful prison. Then you crashed into my world with 12 cups of coffee and the most infectious laugh I'd ever heard, and suddenly I was awake. Charlie felt tears starting, but they were happy tears this time. You didn't just change my life, Charlie. You saved it. You taught me what it means to choose love over fear, dreams over expectations, authentic happiness over perfect appearances. Jamie's voice was thick with emotion. I love your optimism and your courage. I love how you see possibilities everywhere. I love that you make me want to be the best version of myself. Jamie, I love that you cry during commercials about dogs finding homes. I love that you put hot sauce on everything. I love that you still get excited about small victories like they're the most important things in the world. I love that you chose to love me even when it was complicated and scary and uncertain. Yes, Charlie whispered. I haven't asked the question yet. Yes, anyway. Jamie laughed, that wonderful sound that had captured Charlie's heart from the very beginning. Charlotte Rose from Cedar Falls, Iowa. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life choosing you every single day? Yes, Charlie said, pulling him up to kiss her. Yes, absolutely yes. That evening at Rose's, the news was met with exactly the enthusiastic chaos they'd expected. Mrs. Rosa cried, declared she'd known from the first moment they were meant to be, and immediately began discussing wedding menu options. Tony raised a toast that was equal parts touching and hilarious. Maya cried happy tears and started planning Charlie's bachelorette party before they'd even ordered dinner. So when's the wedding? Tony asked after the initial excitement died down. Charlie and Jamie looked at each other and started laughing. We literally got engaged 4 hours ago, Charlie said. We haven't exactly planned the details yet. Well, I know one thing, Mrs. Rosa announced from behind the counter. The reception will be here. I don't want to hear any arguments about fancy hotels. Love started here. Love gets celebrated here. Mrs. Rosa, you can't host a wedding reception in your restaurant, Jamie protested gently. Watch me, Mrs. Rosa said with the kind of determination that had built a successful business from nothing. We'll close for the day, bring in flowers, hire a band, it'll be perfect. Actually, Charlie said slowly, an idea forming. That sounds wonderful. Small, intimate, surrounded by people who love us. What do you think? She asked Jamie. I think, Jamie said, kissing her hand, that it sounds exactly right. 6 months later, Rose's had been transformed into something magical. White lights twinkled overhead, flowers spilled from every surface, and 40 of their closest friends and family filled the small space with laughter and love. Charlie wore her grandmother's wedding dress, altered to fit perfectly and updated with modern touches that Maya had helped design. Jamie wore a simple black suit that made his eyes look like warm chocolate, and when he saw Charlie walking toward him, his smile was brighter than all the lights in Brooklyn. The ceremony was officiated by Tony, who had gotten ordained online specifically for this occasion and took his duties very seriously while still managing to make everyone laugh. Jamie's parents were there, having flown in from Manhattan with expressions of genuine happiness for their son. Charlie's parents had driven from Iowa, her father walking her down the aisle with tears in his eyes. Do you, James, take Charlotte to be your wife, to love and cherish in good times and bad, for richer or poorer, in sickness and health, for as long as you both shall live? I do, Jamie said, his voice strong and sure. I absolutely do. And do you, Charlotte, take James to be your husband, to love and cherish in good times and bad, for richer or poorer, in sickness and health, for as long as you both shall live? I do, Charlie said, her voice clear despite the tears of joy streaming down her face. Then by the power vested in me by the internet, Tony announced with a grin, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Jamie, you may kiss your bride. And he did, while their friends and family cheered, while Mrs. Rosa sobbed happy tears from the kitchen, while Maya captured every moment on camera, And while the late afternoon sun streamed through the windows of the little restaurant where their love story had really begun. Later, as they danced to music played by a local band Tony had found, Charlie looked around at all the faces of people who loved them. Jamie's parents chatting with her parents about grandchildren, Maya and Tony arguing good-naturedly about the best wedding songs, Mrs. Rosa directing the cleanup with the efficiency of a general. "Any regrets?" Jamie asked softly as they swayed together. "Only one," Charlie said, and Jamie's face fell slightly until she continued. "I regret that it took us so long to have that first dance." "Well," Jamie said, spinning her gently, "we have the rest of our lives to make up for lost time. Promise?" "Promise." And as the music played and the lights twinkled and love filled every corner of Rosa's authentic Italian, Charlie and Jamie Wellington danced into their future, proving once and for all that sometimes the most beautiful love stories begin with the most impossible circumstances. Sometimes love really does find a way. Sometimes the coffee disaster that ruins your morning becomes the best thing that ever happened to you. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you find someone worth changing your whole life for. Someone who makes you want to be brave enough to choose love over everything else. The end.